Hi, my name is Agnes.
Hi, my name is David.
And this is At the Root. At the Root, we're about giving leaders, especially introvert leaders, a voice to their story.
We are also here to share the stories of the individuals, the community organizations, and individuals that allows them to tell us their origin story, where it all started, and hence At the Root.
Okay, David, I've been sitting on this one for a couple of weeks now, and I'm so excited to kind of introduce our guest today. So, here's what I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Okay? Our guests today have sat across some of the most powerful people on earth, advocating, negotiating, creating space for Canada in the world stage. She has represented Canada in the most, I would say, we were just talking about this, in the most quiet but fierce way possible. And I love that particular energy about her. And the other thing I loved about her is that I feel like she's someone that can create something out of nothing. And to be a first in doing that is very admirable.
It's entrepreneurial in itself. We talk about entrepreneurship, which is like starting businesses, but there's like the whole mindset of it just starting something from nothing. Okay, so who do we have? Because now you got me excited.
So my clue number one today, I mean, you and I both travel a lot for work, but she, hands down, I think travel more for work than any one of us travel for leisure and work combined.
Oh, that sounds intense.
And I think we can actually ask her for some travel tips today.
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
My clue number two, she knows a thing or two about small and mid-sized business.
Okay.
Which is close to my heart. You guys know that.
Travel a lot, small business.
And I think clue number three would give it away. Clue number three, she was the first and for the longest time the only Chinese Canadian that sat in the cabinet in Ottawa.
Mary.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome.
It's great to be here. Good to see you, David. Good to see you, Agnes. And great to be in this awesome space. And congratulations on this pod that you guys are doing. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been so much fun. And we've interviewed some of your friends along the way. So glad to have you. I know your travel schedule is crazy. You know what? It is so interesting because when we been going back and forth with your schedule and trying to figure today out, you're busier today than before you retired.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that I am equally occupied, but doing things just a little differently than when I was in the job. Yeah. But it's great.
And tell us, what is it like being now, we were just joking before, being a retired politician? Like, what is that? Give us a glimpse into that, because I feel like we see the work of the politicians, but once they retire, like, what is that like? What are you working on? What are you kind of focused on nowadays? What does that look like?
Well, I stepped down now, I guess over a year, about a year and a couple of months. We're now in June, so it was last May that the election, April, May that the election took place. So I concluded my work as the longest serving trade minister in Canada and the member of parliament for Markham-Thornhill. And in 10 years, I spent 10 years in Ottawa, and it was terrific. I loved every minute of it. I loved being an MP. I loved my riding. I cherish the privilege and the honor of being able to serve in Canada for my country and in a file that I absolutely loved. But after 10 years, I thought, it's probably time to take a look at what a new chapter might look like for Mary Ng. So I decided not to run. And of course, there's I have a terrific successor as the member of parliament for Markham-Thornhill. So shout out to Tim Hodgson, who's both a minister and the current MP. But the very first thing I did was rest. To be candid. Yeah. Once I stopped and I needed to pack up life in Ottawa, right? I had a place up in Ottawa, so I had to pack that up. I had a ministerial office that sort of, had to close, that I stopped being a minister. So, but there are things like pictures on the wall and things on your desk that you needed to pack up. I had a constituency office in Markham that I needed to also wrap up. And I also had a parliamentary office, a Hill office. Every MP has that. So once all of that sort of came home and now sitting in my basement, I took a bit of time off and then started just reflecting on what the next chapter is going to look like. And the truth of it is that it is a work in progress. It really is. I know that sort of a year out, one of the things that that continue to still, kind of create that energy and that passion is a passion to help Canadian businesses grow and to grow not only domestically but abroad. I'm not doing anything very specific on that other than, people will call or people will write and I respond, and I've over the years taken many, many businesses on trade missions internationally. So some of those businesses will reach out on LinkedIn and sort of and I will respond. But the one thing I have that I have committed to is I'm Canada's first senior fellow for the Milken Institute.
Nice.
It's a financial think tank that operate in the United States, but where they actually got on my radar was a number of years ago through their Asia Summit. So it's a big investor summit that they operate in Singapore and I think now it's probably in their 12th or 13th year. They operate in the Middle East, they operate in Latin America, in Mexico and Brazil, and they're looking to create a deeper relationship here in Canada. And it's really terrific because you all know, I know, businesses always are looking for greater access to capital. And the Milken Institute they convene about $30 trillion of capital globally. So it's really great to kind of have that affiliation, but I do speaking, I get invited to speak. So that has taken me to, back to Dubai, it has taken me to Singapore, it's taken me back to Indonesia, it's taken me back to the Philippines, it's taken me to Hong Kong, it's taken me into the United States and Mexico. So I've been on the road. And but I have to say, despite being on the road, it has been wonderful. I don't have the schedules that I used to have as a minister where where it is back to back to back to back. Yeah. It's a little bit more leisurely than that. I will go and do a speaking assignment. I will, meet folks, but then I can actually also play tourist, right? So it's been really, really enjoyable. So I think it kind of is the right balance because for me, I just quite can't imagine myself sitting still and not doing anything. So this is, I think, the right balance, right? I still get to go on the road. Yeah. I'm still plugged in and connected and thinking and talking about things that really matter to the Canadian economy and to the global economy. And in doing so, I think it also, I hope as well, will help create and continue to create some of those connections that are so important for Canada's businesses to those markets internationally. So we'll see what the chapter eventually evolves to be, but that's what it's like so far.
But I love that part of it because now that you don't have to, you're still repping Canada hard out there. And it speaks true volume to the fact that
I do wear the Canadian flag. That is true. And the maple leaf. That is absolutely true.
But it speaks volume to the fact that I think even during your term as the longest serving minister for trade, that you really loved your job.
Yes, I did. And I do. As I said, it's such a privilege to be an MP, to get elected by people, right? These are people who say, we believe in the work that you do, and we trust that you will represent our interests. Yeah. And then to have the opportunity to sit around a cabinet table and to have a file like the one I had in trade, but also for some period of time, the small business minister as well, and the economic development minister, it was just, I never really saw it as work, right? Yeah. The schedule was for sure intense, but I couldn't think of doing it any other way. And truly, I loved it. I loved spending time with the businesses. You guys will remember because I would come and visit businesses all throughout this riding, but across Canada and Canadian businesses that are operating internationally. And every story, every hardship, every success was terrific to be, for them to give me a bit of their time to allow me to take a look at what they're doing. And then, and in doing so, helping me do my job, which is how do I create the right policies? How do I contribute to making sure that our government was making the right investments and creating the right conditions and context for Canadian businesses of all sizes to be successful here, but certainly to help them be successful abroad too.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to take us back a little bit because I wonder about this a lot, right? Like we all have dream jobs growing up. Was this your dream job or what was your dream job back then?
No, because I wouldn't have even believed that this is what I could do. Like, my parents immigrated here. I was 7 years old when I came to Canada. My father had already passed well before before I had even, entered political life. So, so sadly he couldn't see it. But to think that he and my mom moved our family here, 3 young kids, to start a life and to build a life in Canada. I learned English in Canada. I mean, I speak English fluently now, but I promise you, at 7, I was speaking Cantonese, right? I mean, and now I wish I had more of that Cantonese, just because, having another language is always good. It's not bad, but it wasn't even a thought. It wasn't even something that is reachable. Like, it was something that you would watch on TV. And, when we came to Canada, it was another Trudeau that was the Prime Minister. And of course, I served under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. But to think that I would be a member of Parliament, that I would put my name out there to get elected, it wasn't even a dream, because you didn't really even think it was accessible. Or you didn't know that this was accessible to you, right? I mean, so...
What's the turning point, though? When do you start to believe that there's an opportunity?
Or the possibility.
Well, so my career started in the public service, like in the Ontario public service, right? So you get a government job, right? I mean, and it was a great learning. I was trained in, public policy analysis, in Ontario, and I worked in the civil service for many years. And when the provincial Liberals under Dalton McGuinty was elected, I was still working in the civil service, but I started to see and learn the power of politics and what it does in terms of representing the interests of people, and how those interests of people get translated into what a government can do in public policy and investments that actually help people. So there was a very dynamic minister at the time in Ontario who was the education minister, in Gerard Kennedy. And so my first job in politics was, I worked for Gerard Kennedy. I was, I worked in, in policy and education policy when he was the education minister. So I learned politics. That was my first foray into politics. And, so with him, he would do town halls and bring people together in a riding. People would come in and ask the minister all kinds of questions. At the time, we were working with teachers' unions as well as school boards to do things like reducing class sizes, investing in schools to make sure that that school infrastructure was good and up to date, and that students had access to curriculum and literacy and numeracy, so that we were building sort of a world-class, continue to build a world-class education system here in Ontario, underpinned by the really great teachers and educators, right? Bringing back curriculum like arts curriculum and French. And so while I worked in the public service and understood how policy making was done, what I learned there was what people told you when he was knocking on doors, or I was knocking on doors with him. What you learn in those town halls, what you learn when you travel to different communities across Ontario. So we would go down to Windsor, we would go to North Bay, or we would go to, Cornwall, so cross, Ottawa. We'd crisscross, and so that's a tour. I went with the minister on tour, and there you're meeting people on the ground. You're meeting people in communities. You're meeting with teachers in their lunchrooms. You're seeing the students, like the little, the young students. And I learned that front line of political work, which to me, it really is just the work of providing a voice for people. And in a democracy, it's wonderful, right? I mean, you choose a party where you think your values most align or fully align, and you help, with the help of people, really begin to add, bring their voices together to determine the kinds of things that are really important, right? I mean, whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it is our economy, whether it's making our economy more inclusive, where we want to do business with around the world, how to create trade agreements so that we are creating those legal and useful frameworks for our Canadian businesses to grow into those economies and to pursue those kinds of opportunities, because the government has done its work, right? So that was sort of that's sort of the way that I got into politics, and then how it stuck. It stuck. And then, and when Prime Minister Trudeau was elected, I went up to Ottawa and as part of the transition team, and I was going, as a volunteer. And while I was up there, you looked around and you thought, gosh, we're at the beginning of a mandate that, with hope and hard work and a lot of commitment and to Canadians, and Canadians were looking at us to, to pursue the work that we had promised in that campaign in 2015. And I joined the Prime Minister's office. I joined the Prime Minister's office as the Director of Public Appointments. And that position resonated a lot with me because representation matters. It was, I remember the Prime Minister saying at the time, we have to bring merit into these publicly appointed positions, but we also need to make sure that our public appointments represent the face and the voice of Canadians. So we need to have Francophone voices, Indigenous voices, women, racialized Canadians, right? I mean, and so merit was always non-negotiable, but I remember saying to him, I said, so you're telling me that the job is to make sure that we find the very best people across Canada and that contribute, whether it was a board, whether it was, it could be a governance board, it could be, sitting on the board of one of our national museums to, to being an adjudicator on the Immigration and Refugee Board, to, to a crown corporation like the Export Development Bank of Canada or the Bank of Canada, right? I mean, these are all public appointments. So I said, so you mean to say that we need to go find the very best Canadians and that those best Canadians need to represent Canadians, like the face of Canadians? Absolutely, absolutely. It was hard to do because we instituted a process to make sure that it was meritorious. But we also wanted to make sure that those people, women, Indigenous people, Francophones, people from the different backgrounds. Like, I mean, think about the incredible lawyers or accountants or professionals that we have all across our community. Like, look at York Region here. Like, look how diverse it is. You don't think those people should actually, represent and serve their country and be on there? Absolutely, they should be. So I sort of, I joined there before I put my name on a sign to go get elected.
And that's when you fell in love with politics.
Yeah. When I started knocking on doors in my by-election, and before that, my nomination, it was February. It was right after Lunar New Year. It's cold. And there was a lot of snow that year. But it was terrific. Like, I remember one door that, I remember this like it was yesterday. I knocked on this one door here in Markham, and this gentleman came to the door. And he said, "Oh, ma'am, hold on." So I said, "No problem," because, I wanted to talk to him because I wanted to tell him about, about my candidacy and that I wanted his support to be elected. But it was also really cold, like really, really cold. And then he goes into the house. He brings his daughter. He brings his wife to the door, and he says, "Okay, now you can talk." And he said to his daughter, he said, her name is Mary, and she's here because she wants to run to be our MP. I think what I've read and what I know, and she'll tell us more, but she and her family is kind of like our family. So I feel like, so I love my riding because my riding feels, I call it my riding, my former riding, but it, everywhere I go in this riding, it just feels right because they're families and they're people that's no different than me. And, and I ran 3 elections here, and the people in Markham-Thornhill graciously, showed confidence at the polls, and I got elected to represent their voices, and so yeah, I loved it. I still do to this day, right? I mean, how can you not love the people, really?
And that's when you've picked a job for the right reason. Like, when at the core of it, you're so passionate about representing our riding that it shows, right? And I'm not hating on other politicians, but when someone loves their job, when they do, and when they truly want, the territory, whether it's Canada or the Thornhill riding, you want the people to be better than tomorrow. To be better than even yesterday.
Look at how diverse, I got to do, I mean, obviously, I'm very familiar with Mid-Autumn Festival and, and Chinese New Year's and all of those things because I grew up with that. But this riding is so diverse with so many communities. So to participate in Eid, in Diwali, in Thai Pongal, and the eastern part of the riding is Thornhill, so a very dynamic Jewish Canadian community, right? I mean, and so there are issues that everybody, contends with, but the celebrations and the learning, like I learned so much because my constituents were so wonderful at teaching me. So it was great, really.
Well, you had one of the toughest jobs actually during COVID.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it
COVID was
can
hard.
be fun to be negotiating international trades and growing the economic portfolio during COVID. Tell us a little bit about that from behind the desk.
Yeah, you will all remember. It's hard to remember now when you see our, our streets and our communities. I mean, sort of, back to, its fullness and its vibrancy and everybody, not walking around wearing masks or that everyone is out, right? But you will remember that almost overnight, our economy shut down. And we needed to do that. And the world needed to do that in order to keep people safe. And I was the small business minister at the time. And honestly, I mean, I remember so clearly in my brain thinking, oh my goodness. Like it brought me back to when I was, when I was growing up. And I thought, if this had happened when my parents had their restaurant, it closed overnight. You have bills to pay. You have staff. You have, and how are you going to do that, right? Because if you don't have customers coming in, then you have no revenue. So how are you going to do that? That was what was in my mind from literally day one as the small business minister, in addition to the fact that so many businesses, we were reaching out to them and they were reaching out to us, of course, which is, and we were learning from, from the businesses about just the kinds of impacts that they were experiencing. And, almost immediately, just having some working capital to deal with those very basic things in record time. I mean, when I think about how fast we were able to roll things up, and look, I mean, it's very easy after the fact, years after the fact, to say, we should have done this, we should have done this. But you know what? At the time, people were hurting and real decisions needed to be made, and we just made them. And the small business loans was one of the first things that we rolled out, along with the Canadian banks. Thank you. I mean, so thank everybody who actually, we really did, we were the best of ourselves, I think, at that time. We really were, because we were all in problem-solving mode, right? So making sure that small businesses had access to those loans quickly, and then there are workers, right? I mean, our business is going to literally lay off everybody, and what happens when people get laid off? Like they also have to, they also have to pay rent or their mortgage. They also have to survive, right? So programs that, programs like the wage subsidy program that essentially the government paid a company pretty much 75% of the wage of a worker so that they wouldn't fire the worker, so that they wouldn't have to let them go. So they were able to keep their businesses intact by keeping their workers, despite the fact that their business was closed, their workers were still able to get paid and therefore deal with the basic things in life. And then, and then we also got things wrong. Like we did the rent subsidy, and we had to do that, I think, 2 or 3 times because we were designing it so quickly, and I'd like to think that we were agile as well, because we heard when it wasn't right, that certain businesses they weren't able to access the rent subsidy, and therefore, were at risk of closing down, et cetera. So, but I think we sort of fine-tuned that, and at the end got that fairly right. But that was a day-to-day, every hour endeavor. And I remember in my home office, behind me, in my home office on one of the walls, there was a menu of my dad's old restaurant, because we still have one. So it's this big menu. So it's like, $5.75 combo A, chicken fried rice. Yeah. Stir-fried beef, egg roll, right? I mean, and I looked at that every single day. And it was a reminder that during this period, small businesses are important to our economy. We needed to do everything we possibly can to not scar and harm the Canadian economy. You'll remember that we also experienced inflation right afterwards, right? I mean, the recovery, but the recovery happened quite quickly for us, right? And in part, I would say, it's because businesses were pretty much able to turnkey their staff were still employed. And yes, it was very hard for many, I remember. But in that recovery, many were also able to pretty much turnkey and open up once it was, from a health standpoint, safe to do so. And during that period, I was probably a handful of ministers that would go to Ottawa. I mean, because we were working virtually, but as the small business minister, I would, I remember driving along the 401 with no cars, because there were also there were no taxis, right? So just no cars, parking at the airport, and then getting on the plane. And I remember in those early days of COVID, I used to sit on this plane and I would count the number of people. And I would be on flights where there'd be 12 people. The least number of people was 5, because I remember counting. That's what it was like. And it's hard to imagine today. It's inconceivable to imagine. Yeah. But we went through that. At the same time, the government needed to procure vaccines. We procured vaccines right away. And at the time, remember, you didn't know which one was going to work, right? Like, which one was going to be the vaccine that was going to begin to help, our elderly, our most, vulnerable, and just people start to deal with the virus, with the vaccine. And I remember, as the trade minister, it was also my job when export restrictions used to sort of go up, to kind of be on the phone. Or I had a lot of many of our colleagues, trade minister colleagues, we were on texts. So I would text and say, so I just read this. It doesn't mean that you're not going to send the shipment to Canada, right? We do have a contract. So it was literally from figuring out those supports for businesses, but it was also making sure that along with my colleagues, at the time, and to do my part as the trade minister, which is facilitating and working with other partners. And also at the time, at the WTO, you might remember that what we experienced immediately after COVID was that all these countries were putting up export restrictions on all kinds of things, right? Like, we needed this input or this input, and we needed to keep it for our country, so they would put export restrictions up. But the supply chain around the world for food, for medicines, are very integrated. I remember making calls and saying, so this ingredient that we need for a diabetes drug in Canada, for making it, was on some export control list somewhere. So those are just the practical things that you do in the job, and you try to unlock those. But with the WTO at the time, Canada was also chairing this group called the Ottawa Group. So it was many countries. It was Canada, the European Union, Japan, Singapore, Australia, Norway. I'm probably missing Mexico. I'm missing a number of countries. But we had put that group together well before COVID, but the idea of the group at the time was to work with like-minded countries to continue to fortify and put up solutions to advance the rules-based trading system. During COVID, this group was terrific, because what we all observed, these export restrictions and just sort of what was happening in the event of a health emergency, of which COVID was, the Ottawa Group started working on what they called a trade and health initiative. So it was thinking up solutions like export restrictions, like notifications, and just procedures, like customs procedures of how goods would flow, between countries in the event of a health emergency. And the Ottawa Group started this work as a small group of countries, and then through the World Trade Organization, because it's a consensus-based organization, so a couple of years sort of, kind of once we were coming out of COVID, the Trade and Health Initiative was actually adopted by the WTO at a multilateral that includes over 140 countries, 150 countries. That was the kind of work that I was very proud to be a part of as Canada's trade minister, but also working with others around the world, truly others around the world. And that is an example of where rules-based trade and where rules and collaboration across borders really, really matter. By the way, in that initiative, the Trade and Health Initiative at the WTO, when I say all of the countries, it includes countries like the United States and China and everything in between, right? And India. So we all agreed that the need for those rules that were developed by us countries were useful and that they were useful to deal with whatever a future health emergency could look like. So multilateralism and that ability to kind of work across borders is essential. And I think that Canada's always been known for that. And I think Canada is doing that today. I think Prime Minister Carney is doing that today with so many of the countries around the world. He is out there continuing to develop those relationships with countries around the world because you need friends, you need allies, and you need to find the common ground that actually allows you to, to pursue interests for the good of your economy and for the good of your people. So bravo to him for the work that he's doing.
It's as if you read the script or something. So my next question is one that's near and dear to me at the moment is the CUSMA renegotiation. So I know you are a big part of the Brexit negotiation in terms of the trade agreements after.
Well, what I did there was we did the agreement with the United Kingdom, Canada and United Kingdom, when United Kingdom left the EU. So they exited, so that was Brexit. But therefore, they didn't have an agreement with Canada anymore, right? So I did the trade continuity agreement, yes, with the United Kingdom when they exited.
So I know that went somewhat smoothly.
Yeah.
With you leading the charge. What would you give those people at the table today with the CUSMA as advice on how to actually come to terms that help all three countries?
Well, I wouldn't need to give them advice because here's the thing. The people who are around that table are very good. Minister LeBlanc is stellar. The chief negotiator for Canada, Janice Charette, she was the clerk of the Privy Council when I was minister. She is terrific. Ambassador Wiseman is a very, very astute business leader, and he's our new ambassador in the United States. And the trade team who does this work are some people that I certainly know, and they are terrific. So Canada has incredible. So I think Canadians should be very assured that they have got some of the very best talent and people here in Canada. It's a review. The agreement does not end on July 1st. So Canadians should be assured that the agreement continues to be in place until
it's renegotiated.
Until all three countries decide that they want to continue to pursue it. But if they don't, it will continue to go. I mean, this agreement, when it was negotiated in 2018-19, it runs for 16 years, right? I mean, it will continue to exist unless a country deliberately withdraws. So you'd have to deliberately withdraw. No one is doing that at the moment, and I don't believe that will happen either, because I believe that this agreement, just like NAFTA before, is a good agreement. Why? Because it's good for all three economies in North America. It also makes North America a strong economic, it is one of the most successful economic jurisdictions in the world. I mean, we do over, 1.8, my last set of numbers, almost $2 trillion worth of trade. It is incredibly successful, it is incredibly integrated, and all three countries benefit. That is why you do trade agreements, because it's got to be a win-win-win. Are there issues? Of course there are issues. I mean, in fact, every July 1, I, along with the Americans and the Mexicans, used to do the Free Trade Commission. That was our annual general meeting, if you will, and I represented Canada, starting with the very first one in 2021, so a year after CUSMA came into force. But I think that what the government is doing is right. I think that Canadians expect their government to get the best deal. They've got to be able to do this sort of renewal or this review in a way that ultimately is good for Canadian businesses and workers.
Yep.
It has to be that. And I do also believe that there is a pathway or pathways to do that. And I have confidence that the government is doing their work now. And if people are hearing sort of the missives from the president, we can't predict what the American president will do, but we sure the heck can lead and land our planes the way that is good for Canadians. And there's no doubt in my mind that what the Prime Minister and what this government is looking after, always, first and foremost, the interests of Canadians. I would also say that that there are a few of the affected sectors that are that where it's hurting a lot. Tariffs, unjustifiably, on steel, aluminum, softwood lumber. It's terrible. It's unjustified. They should not be there. And I know that I don't know, but I would expect because I know the teams. They're going to work. They are working very hard to do everything they can to deal with those tariffs. But at the same time, because of CUSMA, because of the agreement, we in Canada probably have the lowest tariff rate with the United States because of CUSMA, right? I mean, many things are CUSMA compliant. And as long as it's CUSMA compliant, the trade agreement is in place, which means that that is good for our businesses. But I do think that the unpredictability of it and just this, and the need to do this under the current circumstances are definitely challenging. I mean, they are. But I also know how resilient our people are, and I know how good the teams are in Ottawa and Washington. Our teams.
Another one I would love to kind of uncover a little bit. So you led the charge in terms of the Women Entrepreneurship strategy back in, this is like 2018 maybe?
Yep.
2018?
Yep.
And they just announced another $173 million reinvestment back into the program. So seeing that, but walk us through, because you talk about COVID, how things were fast, but something like this must have taken years. Walk us through, how long was the actual process before you actually got to announce it, and seeing the impact it has today, what does that mean?
It was very clear from day one in the Trudeau government that we were going to create an economy that was inclusive and that was going to benefit all Canadians, right? If you look at initiatives like the Canada Child Benefit, when you look at parental leave, I mean, we have 18-month parental leave here. I mean, I have traveled around the world, and certainly when I talk to women-led businesses, boy, oh boy, do they, is that a real advantage for them? And $10 a day daycare. Childcare is huge. Childcare and early learning is huge for, especially if you're a woman leader or a women business leader. Knowing that you have childcare that's affordable where your family, your children are looked after, so you can pursue and go gangbuster on your business, on your pursuit, absolutely critical. I often used to say, I was an economic minister or minister with an economic file, but I could never have done that work without the others around the table that actually also looked after the other policies that supported the growth of the Canadian economy. Frankly, the women's entrepreneurship strategy, it was 2018, we were in government in 2015, so those policies and those commitments were already a part of what we said we would do in, as part of the first Trudeau mandate. So the women's entrepreneurship strategy was one of the first things I got to announce, that I got to sort of put together and announce. But it was in development even before I walked into the small business file, right? And it was a $7 billion investment at that time. And the return on investment is $150 billion to the Canadian economy. Why would you not do that, right? Add more women to the economy so that you can add more growth in your economy. Today, many, many years later, I continue to stay in touch with some of those women-owned businesses, with the ecosystem partners, with the funders of women-led businesses. And today, I know for certain that that public policy that has been put into place has directly contributed to the growth of women-led businesses in this country. Look at the Ella program that is here, right? I mean, at Y-Space, you've got, and what problems were we trying to solve? Helping women navigate a system so they can get access to capital.
Right.
Helping create ecosystems for business training, business support, business mentoring, that women, they do it just a little differently, right? So let's, so build that out all across the country. Today, we have women entrepreneurial ecosystems that has led trade missions, women-focused trade missions across the world. There's definitely a focus in the Asia Pacific. And today, when I look at those companies, they're AI companies, they are agri-tech companies, they are logistics companies, and they are growing in markets like Japan, like Singapore, like Philippines. It's terrific. Cybersecurity companies, and these are women-led Canadian businesses that are growing and getting customers around the world. And so I was very proud. I think governments continue to invest because there is a return on that investment.
Absolutely.
And good for them.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that. As part of Change Connect, a part of our portfolio is helping company apply for grants and putting in the best position. And I still go to these summits and conversation, and you can hear people talk behind my back and say, there's no way the government would give us free money. And I'm like, yo, dude, you got to understand the economics in why they are doing it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you would never come to term with, it's not free money. It's because you're using this money to generate more economic impact for the country, which is good for all of us, right?
If a woman-owned business grows, they hire people, right? Those people pay taxes. They are contributing to the Canadian economy. That business is also growing in revenue, and that is contributing to the Canadian economy. I hope that business is also growing by seeking customers that are in other parts of the world where their good or where their service or their expertise is also something that we can export and therefore enable them to grow. That is the return on investment, and that's the basic calculus, the public policy calculus, right? I mean, and yes, you've got to be thoughtful about that balance, absolutely. Right. I would also say that they are largely loans, right? I mean, I think we did, there was one program that was sort of, grants at the time, very early on and very, very oversubscribed, but I bet you if I went down the list of the companies, and there was only about a little over 300 across the country, it was about $100,000 each, but it was granted based on a business case that, and we were oversubscribed. Like we ended up with, and it was I think about a $30 million program at the time, and so therefore only about 300 or some odd businesses, and we had about 5,000 business cases come in, and we were only able to do 300 at the tune of $30 million. But what business case did they have to send to us for us to actually, for the system, the department to adjudicate? Do you have a plan to grow your business and export? And if you do, then let us help you in this and tell us specifically how you were going to do this, and let us invest so that you could then be more productive. That's the point.
Absolutely.
Right?
So Mary, thank you for being with us. Let me wrap it up. We have these questions at the end where rapid fire, no need for explanation, A or B.
Okay.
Given just your extensive travel, I think we'll go down the path of places that you love to visit.
Okay.
Okay?
That I would still like to visit?
That's a great question. That you would still like to visit.
Okay.
Oh, I think for
And then I
you
want to
that's
know
gonna
the
be
top
tough.
two that you want to go back
I
to.
don't know how I'm going to do that, but anyways.
Let's start off, I know you've done some recent travel, so let's start by Singapore or Vietnam.
That's tough.
Oh my gosh, it's so tough. I have to say both. They're both. I love them both for different reasons. I mean, sitting on, with a street vendor and eating sort of clams in Vietnam was absolutely wonderful. And Singapore is just so dynamic, so I don't know. I can't choose. I know, this is really terrible.
Let's start off with something easier. I think it's going to be easier. Let's say London or Paris, or like UK versus France.
Well, I'm going to do it this way because I'm going to be in London and France in about 8 days from now. So I'm going to just, and so I'm going to say London just because it's going to be the first place I'm going to hit, where the plane is going to hit, where I'm going to get out.
UK versus Germany.
Oh my gosh, that's really hard too. I attended G7 in Germany. It was spectacular, and there's such dynamism. Yeah.
Germany or, well, Dubai and UAE.
Oh, Dubai is really neat. It is really neat. Yeah.
It's a special place in my heart too, Dubai. But I don't know what's happening over there at the moment. Dubai or UAE versus, let's bring it back to Asia, China.
I haven't been back to China in quite some time, but they are hosting APEC this year.
Oh.
So I think it's in my calendar for a little later this year.
Yay! China or Italy.
Well,
I'm going down the food. The
Like-
you know
food
what?
route.
Many years ago, I spent a summer in school in Italy.
Oh, that's
and
so
loved
cool.
it. So I'm gonna say in fact, I'll even make it more specific. I'll say Siena, Italy.
Oh. How Italy versus, let's go back to my Asia. Italy versus Vietnam.
Oh yeah, that's hard. That's hard.
They're so
Vietnam.
different too.
It's very,
very
it's
different.
so
They're so
different.
different.
You can tell by my answers that like I love it all because I can pick out something very specific and unique related to every single
Yeah.
one of those places. That oh my gosh, I love that about that. I love that about that. I love
Yeah.
that about that. Yeah.
So what's the one place you want to go to now that you haven't been?
So
But you've been everywhere in the world. Where have
Maybe
you
there's
been?
a spot. I don't
so
know.
Norway.
Oh.
In the Scandinavian. So I haven't been to Norway yet, but I'm going to be there in about a month's time. So I'm very much looking
Nice.
forward to that.
That would be awesome. This is my question I ask every guest. Are you a rice person or a noodle person?
That's right.
Rice.
Oh,
We got our first one.
one.
First one.
I love noodles too, but I really like rice. Yeah.
Same. It's
Yeah.
all our guests have said noodles.
And we're both
So we're
rice
the only
people.
one. Yeah,
no,
we're
I
the
like
only
rice.
ones.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's how I feel.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Like rice is a staple.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's
you
true.
just feel like you need to have rice.
It's just it complements everything so well.
Like noodles is a nice to have, rice is a must have.
Oh.
We got our first
What do you
rice
think?
person. Well, I always go back to like the comfort meals or
Yeah,
like what you
yeah,
grow up on, and it's
exactly.
like the congis
Yeah.
That's
or
what we
like
talked about.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes, if I really just, kind of want, I literally just, will make fresh pot of steamed rice and just put a little bit of soy sauce
Oh,
and eat
that-
that. Right? Isn't that like
Yes.
not so good? Or for the Chinese, like steamed rice and lapchung.
lapchung.
lapchung,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, right into it, right?
Yeah,
It's, oh my God, so good.
yeah.
So, there
That
was
was
a
the one.
recipe. I was gonna say
That was that, and
that
then
is
I
great.
talk about this a lot. I feel like I've said this multiple times now, but it's like the fried egg with soy sauce and then white
yeah.
rice.
Yeah.
And then anyways, later on in the guest, you will know that there's a secret recipe.
Yeah,
Really?
like an
All
egg
around that.
mayonnaise.
You can make it. Oh, I tried it last week.
Did you try it?
It was so good.
No, not with mayonnaise.
I get
you
it.
whip the
No,
egg
you
itself
whip the egg
into like almost like a
into
mayonnaise.
a
consistency,
marinade
Okay, I can
sauce.
see
and you
that.
add a little Maggi instead of salt. You add Maggi
Oh,
sauce,
I could see that.
and like you put it over bread. I was like,
I could see that.
I haven't
No,
made it
over
yet.
rice.
Was it good?
I made it. It was fantastic. The recipe came from one of the top 100 chefs
Yeah.
in Canada. So give it a try.
Bread. I bake a sourdough bread.
Mm.
I started that during pandemic,
Yes.
and it has stayed with me.
Baking?
Really?
No, not
Just specifically the sourdough.
bread.
Oh,
I make a loaf. I cut it up. I freeze it. It works for like I only
It's
have
true.
one slice a day, so it works for like 2 weeks, week and a half.
oh, that's pretty awesome.
That is fantastic. And to be fair, I look at you as an icon, like for the Chinese or Asian Canadian little girl that
We need
had
more.
a dream. Like,
We need more. We need a pipeline because today there isn't someone like me around that table, and I don't, and I think that that in the community and I've been thinking about this as well as part of my next chapter in terms of how I can give back, because I think that's really important too, to make sure that there's a pipeline for Chinese Canadians,
Yeah.
young girls, young men, to be a part of participating in
Yeah.
civic life, which I
Well,
think is just so important, right?
well, we were just saying the other day too that, like, our parent not force us, but like
Yes,
tell
they
us
do.
to be like
Yes.
accountants or the safe
Absolutely.
stuff, right?
My parents used to say, why do you spend so much time doing this? You don't even get paid. Like, why are you doing all of this, right? But they, on the one hand, they did understand it.
Yeah.
It's not the thing that they would encourage you to do because,
Yeah.
they're here in a new country. They want you to find prosperity and safety at the same time.
For sure.
Right? They want you to get a job that's going to be able to sustain you, right? Like, help you make a living, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so I understand that. I understand it, but at the same time, today, the next generation, we should be encouraging a lot more of that,
Different.
right?
So what's the one advice you have for someone like now that you've been at the table. You've shown us what representation could look like, and it's possible, which is important. What's your advice now to the next generation of young Asians who want to become a politician or want to follow those?
Volunteer.
Yeah.
I mean, you can volunteer at a hospital, you can volunteer, in your community, you can volunteer on a sports club. But I would also say, find someone you think, find a politician. I mean, someone in civic life that you really think, gosh, I like the work that person is doing. They don't have to be Asian.
Yeah.
Find someone who, I worked with people like Gerard, right? I mean, for many years. I mean, or people like Justin when he started, getting to politics. I mean, just so many people who I just thought, they have the values that I have. They work hard. They care about their communities. They care about people. Look for that and go and volunteer. And it is uncomfortable, right? Because you can go and you don't know. You often will not know what you're doing. You probably don't know anybody that's there. So it's a bit of, get out of your comfort zone.
Right.
And maybe your friends aren't doing it, that's okay, but get out of your comfort zone and just go and try to see if you can find any of these opportunities. I had people join my youth council. People would come and volunteer for me when I was on my campaign, but also just in my riding, just generally. There are lots of people in this country, right? I mean, at all levels of government. And I think you go in there and then you see what it's like. And I would say that not just for young people, I would say that for everybody, because I think it helps you really, it pulls the curtains back to see what, when you guys used to come, I would have a big barbecue every summer. Yeah. There were so many people that would come. Yeah. Everybody would come, right? I mean, but do you think we did that on our own? I mean, we had people to, check in, check people in. We had people to give people food tickets. We had people, that would help people, help the seniors make sure that they were sitting down. We had people who were doing performance. It really, that for proverbial, it takes a village, it takes a community, it does, right? And I would say to our community, go out there and find, and see someone that you really like and say, gosh, I kind of like what they're doing. And find a way to volunteer. You can volunteer on their riding associations. You can volunteer when they're hosting something. I mean, some offices or some of the MPs, MPPs, councillors, etc. They will work to give volunteer hours, and that's really good too if you're in school. So and so I would encourage people to do that. I think it's important to do.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. That was so good, you guys. This was so good. Thanks for having me. I don't do this very much these days. This is so enjoyable.
Oh, I'm glad.
I'm so glad you said yes. It was so much fun. We wanted to learn so much more about trade, and we knew you had a particular angle, so we wanted to make sure it's captured.
Perfect. Thank you for listening to the At the Root podcast. We're super excited, and please like and subscribe.
And stay tuned for the next episode.